discretion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live on a Monday. We haven't been here in a while, but so excited to be here with you this morning, and we're going to be talking about this amazing topic. I'm pointing the wrong way. My Carol Merrill's off. 10 tips for successful bedtimes, because I was just saying earlier, if your child isn't sleeping, then you're not sleeping, and it all goes crash, right? Because if we're not getting rest, then we are not going to be capable to do what all the other things that we want to do in life. So sleep is important, and we want bedtime to be successful. So that's what we're going to be talking about. But first, let me say this. I'm Shannon Penrod. I am a proud pony. That is a parent of a neurodiverse individual, and I couldn't be prouder of that individual. So thrilled to be here with you in that respect. I'm not an expert in autism. That is not my role in this life to play. I'm not even an expert at being a pony, a proud parent of a neurodiverse individual, but I'm somebody who's been through a lot with a lot of people and learned from a lot of people and covered these kinds of topics for a long time. So between what I learned myself, what I've learned from other parents, what I've learned from other people on the spectrum, what I've learned from experts, I sometimes will do these parent-to-parent perspectives for you because I love our autism experts, and we feature those on Wednesdays, and I love what they have to say, but there is a filter for me as a parent. That the story I always tell is many years ago when my son was going through a period of time where he was having really bad tantrums whenever we would go into a grocery store, and it was really hard for me, and it was hard for him, I'm sure, and hard for the people around us. And we called in our team of experts and said, help us with this. And one of the experts said, let's walk through what's happening and everything. And he was showing me what I could do, because I couldn't get my son, when he was tantruming, into the car and into his 5-point harness because he was hitting me in the head while that was happening. And that it was really to the point where I didn't feel like I could go to the grocery store anymore. And so he went through this whole step process for me of how I was going to get him into the car safely, and it was going to be okay for him, and it was going to be okay for me, and yada, 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 whatever. But I just kept sitting there and fuming. And finally I said to this wonderful, wonderful Art Wilkie, this amazing man, and I just yelled at him, and he's the nicest person, so I had no right to yell at him, but I was like, where is my purse in this scenario? And he was like, what? And I said, I have a purse, and if my purse is in the basket, then I'm going to get robbed. I've had that happen before as I'm dealing with my child. If I put it in the car, then where is my child when I'm putting it in the car while he's tantruming and hitting me in the head? And I have a purse, and the purse is important, and don't bother telling me about the intervention unless you tell me what to do with the purse. You know, because sometimes as parents, we have something else that maybe the experts, and he so appreciated this. And he said to me, oh, okay, is that part of the problem that I wasn't realizing because I'm a man and I don't carry a purse? And I said, yes, that's part of the problem. And he thought about it for a minute. He said, okay, do you think you'd be willing to wear a fanny pack for a couple of weeks while we get this procedure done? And I felt like the stupidest person on the face of the planet. And I was like, duh. That had never occurred to me because I was so entrenched in the problem. So, I always say now that I love to hear from the experts, but we have to put it through the parent filter of what's actually happening too. And I think that that's an important perspective, so I share it with you here. Things that I've learned from myself and my circumstances, other parents, and the experts melded together. That's the parent-to-parent perspective. So let's talk about just for a second. We are live right now. I believe we are live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all the things. Look at that. Chris is going to show you some of those on our screen. Our fabulous Chris Desmond. And while he does that, I'm going to remind you that the show is live right now, and then it will play later on and all those places you can find it, but also in podcasts. So it will be available any place you get your podcasts on any of those platforms, as long as it's a free platform, right? There's a couple that it's pay to play, and we don't participate in that because we want this content to be free for you. So it's a free download wherever you go. I do like to remind you that there is a cost to doing the show, and there is a cost for you downloading it. We do not transfer that cost to you. We've been doing the show for 13 years now, and I have fought for 13 years to make sure that that cost does not come to you, because we want the information to be there for you, but that means that we do have to pay for it, which is why when you download our podcast now, you will see that there are lots of advertisements on them. We hope that you'll appreciate and embrace that, because that is savings in your pocket. If it really is annoying to you that you don't want, you just like are in a hurry and you don't want to listen, we have a way for you. It's if you go to glow.fm/autism live, you can subscribe to the podcast and get an ad-free version of it. And if you can, it's $5 a month, and if you want to pay for it for a year, it's even less for that. And I know I want to speak to this. We've been on a little bit of a hiatus, only doing bare minimum shows, but we're cycling back into doing more shows. And we got the Festival of Toys coming. There's a lot of exciting stuff coming. So we hope that you will listen in whatever way that you can listen. And by the way, you can write into the show right now on any of the platforms that we're live, or you can write specifically to me if you're watching us only, listening to us only in podcast, and you're like, I can't, I'm not on those platforms, then you can write to me, Shannon, at autism-live.com. So that's Shannon, SHANNON, at autism- that's the little dash in the middle, live, LIV as in Victor, E.com, and I love to hear from you guys. So a couple of things before we get started on the bedtime thing, and then I'm going to try to remember to talk about these. We are just less than 2 weeks away from our All Ghouls Gala. This is our big fundraiser every year that we participate in. And when I say we, Autism Live is very active and participates with Autism Care Today. That's the charity that was founded by Dr. Grant Pichet that gives grants to families like yours. There is a grant cycle that's open right now. If you want to apply for a grant, you can. I will tell you that grants only get fulfilled when we have donations. And one of the things that we do every year is do a big fundraiser. This is the second annual All Ghouls Gala. It's a ginormous Halloween party that's an adult Halloween party. It's very adult. There are no children allowed at these parties, because it's an open bar. Is really the thing. It's not anything else other than that, but it's an open bar, and the ticket price is food and open bar. This year we lowered the ticket price so that more people could afford to come to the event, but there are lots of other things at the event that will raise money, like auctions and casino and fortune tellers and a caricature artist, all of those. It's sort of like a carnival. You buy tickets and then you can do the different activities with the tickets. So we hope that we're going to raise a whole lot of money, because we want to be able to help a lot of different people. So if you are going to be in the Los Angeles area, I really encourage you to come and buy some of those low-cost tickets, because you should be there. Dr. Temple Grandin is going to be there. She's one of our honorees, as is Joe Mantegna and Ariva Martin. So amazing people to be there. All of them and the people that are there to support them. Really going to be an incredible event. If you can't come, but you'd like to make a donation, you absolutely can. You can make a donation to ACT Today anytime you want. It's ACT, ACT-today.org. We used to really be into hyphens. I don't understand why, but act-today.org to make a donation. But I'll tell you something really fun is that you could buy a ticket for another autism family, or and you can specify, you can write to us and tell us who you want it to go to. It can go to an adult on the spectrum. It can go to a mom, a dad, or just leave it up to us, whatever you want to do. that we'd gladly take that as well. So I hope that you will be able to participate. If you can't participate, and if the ticket price, which I think is $125, is more than you want to donate, please go to Act-Today and make a donation of any size. And if you can't do that, there are a couple of other things that you can do to help ACT. One is to participate in the SMILE program. I don't know if you know about this on Amazon, but we all order a lot of stuff from Amazon, right? If you go to SMILE Amazon and you pick Autism Care Today as your charity, every time you buy something from Amazon, they will make a donation. It's not a huge amount, but it adds up, you guys. It adds up a lot. Just from one person, because we all order so much from Amazon now, it adds up a lot. So that's a way that you can support Autism Care Today through doing what you normally do, which is order from Amazon. But we also encourage you to share about Autism Care Today on whatever social media pages you have and invite other people. I think sometimes, especially we get into this time of year, we're almost into Giving Tuesday, and there are people in the world who like to make donations because it's a tax deduction, that they would rather give the money to a charity than have to pay that in tax. If you know somebody who's like that, please encourage them and tell them that Act Today is a great charity because it does translate into things for families like yours. So there is that. I also want to say that this Friday, it seems like, oh my gosh, it's like tomorrow practically. I'm going to be speaking at the Fall TACA conference. So that is this Friday that's coming up. If you go to tacanow.org, then you can see all the things that are going to be happening at this wonderful conference. And I'm one of the first speakers, because the thing starts on Friday morning. I'm one of the first speakers on Friday morning. Guess who's speaking on Saturday? Dr. Temple Grandin. And so many other speakers. They have three, except for Temple. When Temple speaks, we'll all be in one room, but usually they have 3 tracks at a time. And, I can't pick which one I want to go to because you can't go to all of them, right? But I love what TACA does because you can buy a ticket and come for very low cost and see the whole thing, right? Or you can buy an online ticket where you can enjoy the recordings from all of them, including my talk, including Dr. Temple Grandin's talk, and everyone else. And you get that, they don't do it simultaneously, but I think you get it next week, and then you have it until the end of the year. It's a really low cost, great price to have access to that many things. I know I am going to be buying one of those tickets so that I can watch everything that I missed. So that's tacanow.org. I'm going to try to do a couple of little short live videos on my Facebook, because I love to go to the resource fair. I find all this great stuff and meet great people at the resource fair. So I'm going to try to do a couple of little live interviews if I can figure it out. And let's face it, I'm a Luddite, so I don't know. We're not, we'll see what happens. Okay, so that's all of the business out of the way. Now it's time to talk about our topic tonight, which is bedtime and having a successful bedtime. I love when I get to, and I'm so excited to be at the TACA thing because I'm going to meet parents like you guys, right? And I love to ask parents, what's the toughest time of the day for you right now? Like, what are you having a tough time with? And it's very interesting because, it's usually, I would say the hit parade is there's 3 times the day that's bedtime, mealtime, and trying to get out the door in the morning to be someplace on time. And I can remember when all 3 of those were a nightmare on Elm Street for me. And how great life becomes when you start ticking those off and saying, let's not make that a battle. Let's not make that a battle. Let's figure out what we need to do to make this work. Now, with the bedtime thing, it's especially difficult because so often when we are overtired, our judgment is not the clearest. Right? So we will say, no, Shannon, I've tried all of the things on this list that you're about to tell us. And I'm going to tell you, I absolutely believe that you absolutely have tried all of these. Sometimes it's that you got to get them all happening at the same time. And maybe you got 7 of them, but you don't have the 8th one. And so it's not quite clicking. So we're going to go through these really quickly, but I want you to Breathe for a minute and picture a world in which your child goes to bed at a regular bedtime and that you know that they are safe in their bed, that they are happy, and that they're going to stay in there and they're going to sleep, and that this is now your downtime for you to sleep, for you to watch that television program that you wanted to watch, to meditate, to, do whatever it is that you need to do. That bath that you thought you were never going to take again, maybe it could be back on the table again, because that's part of what's at stake here. It's actually much bigger than that, but I want there to be enough motivational stuff for you to want to be able to say, okay, what part of this isn't working? What do I need to tackle here? Okay, but let's go through this really quickly, my 10 tips for successful bedtimes. I'm going to run through them, hopefully in a minute and a half, and then we'll go back and talk about them at length. Okay, so let's go ahead. Let's see. Number one, and I know a lot of you are going to get emotional about this, but you got to ditch the naps. I'll give you all the reasons why in a second. Number two, we're going to emphasize getting fresh air and exercise during the daylight hours. So crucial. Number three, make the bedroom safe and cozy. And we're going to talk about how you involve your child in that. Number four, make a bedtime ritual. And you probably think you already have one, but we're going to up your game on that a little bit. Number five, we're going to start the bedtime ritual at the same time each night, as much as possible, right? Number six, no stimulants in the bedtime ritual. There's no candy, there's no sugar, there's no artificial colors in that bedtime ritual. Number seven, we're going to make a plan and stick to the plan no matter what, except when you can't, right? There's always an asterisk. Number eight, we're going to get support for the first week of sleep intervention. Sometimes this is the part that you didn't get to do, and we'll talk about why that's crucial. Number nine, we're going to be willing to go slowly. I'll give you all my tips for that. And number 10, we're going to keep things dull. Anytime after we start that bedtime ritual, we're going to keep things dull. Okay, so at number 11, we're going to reward good sleep hygiene in the morning. All right, so I promised you 10, I gave you 11. And did I want to give you 354? Yes, because here's the difficult thing with the sleep. There are all different kinds of issues that you could be having, right? So this is not a one size fits all. But as we go through these 10, 11 things, let's talk about, and feel free to write in. I didn't mention this before, but the chat is open right now. So feel free to be writing in and telling us what your particular sleep issue is. Because, and it could be a bunch of them, right? It could be that your child goes to sleep and wakes up 2 hours later and is up all night. It could be that your child can go days on end and not sleep, right? That's a different issue. It could be that your child will not go to sleep unless you are right there in the bed with them. It could be that your child will go to sleep, but if you leave the room, they're back up. It could be that your child gets up 32 times in the middle of the night, right? All of these things are different issues. And we're going to attack them in different ways because they have different they're different problems, so they have different solutions, right? So I was trying to make something generic enough for these 11 tips that it could cover everything. But feel free to write in if you've got a very specific issue that is happening with bedtime. But I'm going to try to cover as much as I can here. So let's start with number 1, which is ditch the naps. If you've got a child, and this is hard because every child is different, right? But if you've got a child that, there are some kids that can be 4 years old and still taking a nap and it's appropriate. Hear me say that some children taking a nap when they're 4 years old, they need to do that and that it's appropriate. However, here is the big asterisk. If the child is not sleeping well at night, this is a sign that that nap is not functioning in the way that we want it to for this child. I cannot tell you the number of times that I have met parents who have said that they don't want to do ABA because their child needs to take a nap in the middle of the day. And I understand that, and we don't want to be cruel and we don't want to exhaust children, right? I'm not a taskmaster. We're not running a labor camp here, right, for kids. And sleep is good. Sleep is great. But if the nap is for preventing the child from being able to sleep through the night, then it's not this warm, cushy thing that you keep holding on to. Okay, so if you are tuning into this because you are having bedtime issues, that is a sign that the nap needs to go. I know it's emotional and it's hard, and it could be that your child is going to get really tired for a little while, but that's kind of what we want, that there is a progression in life that, we start out, and babies need naps on a regular basis. There's nothing bad about a nap, right? But once a child turns a certain age, there are things that we want them to learn and grow and do during the waking hours, and we want them to rest during the nighttime hours. And there is a transition that needs to be made. Now, later on, and in a lot of cultures, there is, a built-in rest time. I'm not saying that you can't, dim things down a little bit during the afternoon, but if they're not sleeping at night, this really is the red flag saying to you, it is time to ditch the naps. It's going to be hard. And your child is a creature of habit, and they've gotten really used to, okay, it's a certain time of the day, and I listen to my body, and my body goes to sleep. All of that is good, by the way. All of that is fantastic, and we want to apply that towards a bedtime that we decide. So how do you get there? How do you do this? Well, I always go to Disneyland in terms of, the example of when people say to me, my child is, so tired after a day of ABA, and I just think that it's just wrong to have a child have that much stimulus, and they're just too tired. And I always go, when you take your child to Disneyland, is that what you think and how you feel? Do you feel that Disneyland is too exciting for your child, and it's too much and it's too tiring and we should not do Disneyland? No. Nobody says, I don't know, my child's going to get too tired at Disneyland, so let's not go to Disneyland, right? So I want to say to you, and here's the other thing, that I see children all the time at Disneyland, and little children who get really, really cranky, and it's because they have not had their nap. But what does everyone say? They go, oh, they're going to sleep good tonight. Yes, because that's kind of how it works. So I want to say to you, you don't have to go to Disneyland, but what you want to do is make something really worthwhile for your child to do. Maybe it's that you go to the park for the day, maybe you do something like that. But and you gloss over that nap time, and it really is hard. Can I be honest? I put this as number one because this is really hard. And you might have to do all kinds of, jumping around and everything to keep them awake past bedtime. And sometimes what happens when we totally ditch the nap is that you're going to kerfuffle this a little bit. Heaven knows I did, right? That we pushed really hard to get through that nap period time, and we managed to do it. And then we were feeding him dinner, and he fell asleep in his plate, right? And it was a little too early. And so now we had the other problem that he went to sleep, but he woke back up and he was up the rest of the night. Don't panic if that happens, right? But you've got to get this cart on, on the right track. And part of that is making sure that they are tired during the day. So you're going to give them fun and exciting things to do. And it might mean, and I've got it in this talk later on, to ask for support. And that you and somebody else, you tag team and say your job is to keep them awake right now, and to keep them really excited and moving around, whatever, until the time that we start the bedtime ritual, and then it's all bets off. But if you want to set yourself up for success in the bedtime ritual, you got to let go of the nap. You got to let go of the nap. They need to be tired when it's bedtime. And if they've had the nap, they're not going to be. And it doesn't matter how hard you do the bedtime ritual. If they're not tired, you're not going to be set up for success. So ditch the nap. I know, I'm sorry, it feels terrible. You'll live through it, and your life will be better. So number two, kind of what we've already been talking about, we're going to prioritize fresh air and exercise during the daylight hours. I wanted to put a bunch of words before this, like get a lot, but a lot means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, right? So I just want to make sure that we're adding it in. This is a great time of year where the weather isn't too harsh most places, because we're kind of in between harshness, right? It's hopefully not too hot, hopefully not too cold, and nobody should be afraid of a little rain. But it's a great time to get out. If you participate in Halloween activities, like there's pumpkin patches everywhere. You don't have to buy something. Go and look at pumpkins. Go and walk around. Go be outdoors. Go on a nature hike and collect leaves and things of that nature. It will be good for you. It will be good for your child. There is something to be said about when you have I know I've been going through this especially lately where I have these very busy days where it's all cerebral kind of stuff and I'm working at the computer and, sitting here at the desk and doing stuff, right? So I'm exhausted, but I haven't physically had anything to do. It's not a good plan, right? And your kids are learning a lot. Their brains are so active. You gotta let them have an opportunity to let it out of the yayas. And, swimming is a great activity. It wears our kids out, but going for that nature walk. And if you don't have the ability to do that for whatever reason, maybe it is too hot or too cold where you live, I'm a big fan of making your house an obstacle course, taking every laundry basket you have, rearranging the furniture. We know from talking to expert OTs about the big gross motor muscles that we're having to push and pull. Like have your kids, this sounds so weird because everybody goes, oh, kids on the spectrum, they need this, they need that, whatever. I love the example of the mom who said, oh no, I have my kids every week pull the couch out, pull the couch out and push the couch back and they vacuum behind the couch, little kids. And somebody was like, that's terrible. You have your kids do housework. And the OT in the room was like, no, that's brilliant. It's just brilliant because we need to get their big muscles moving and kids actually, as long as it's stuff like that, sometimes they think it's really, really fun because they get to be the big person and pull the couch and push the couch and run the vacuum. It's not till they're older that they resent it and that they don't want to, then they know, oh, it's cleaning stuff and I don't really want to do it. Little kids love that because they're doing what you do and what the people around them that are older doing, and that's learning through observation. It's all good for them. But if you can do that kind of stuff outside, do it. Get those big muscles moving, take them to the local playground, make that happen. And if you're struggling with that because like my child, he would run for the street, ask for somebody to come with you. If you're doing ABA, do ABA at the playground. It's good for them. Okay, so if you ditch the nap and you've got fresh air and exercise during the daylight hours, your child's going to be a lot more tired than they were before, and you're going to have to keep track of that. Let's go to number 3 here. We're also going to involve them in making that bedroom safe and cozy. You really got to build up whatever the bedroom is, that it is the place that we go that's safe and that it's, when you're there, that feeling of when you take your baby and you snuggle them all up after a bath and they're in the towel and you're snuggling them. And we used to sit on the couch and read a book together and it's that cozy time. Bed's got to feel the same way. And there are lots of different ways that you can do that. It's making sure, some of them it's having a plushie, whether it's an animal or a blanket or something like that, that their pillows and their blankets and their whatever their sheets are, that it's super cozy. For one kid, that might mean having Dora the Explorer sheets, and for another kid, it might be Star Wars sheets, right? But it's their space. It's something that they're excited. I feel like it's the PJs too. A couple of years ago, there was a big to-do about pajamas, and many of the pajamas that they make for kids are soaked in flame retardants. Yes, I know. It's not my favorite thing, but the reason why they do that is because if it's a loose pajama and there would be a fire, it can be, really catastrophic for the child, because if there's room between the pajamas and their skin, it's a bad fire combo. So if you want to get the pajamas that are not flame retardant, which are the ones that I really recommend for our kids, they're the ones that fit snugly. There's an extra benefit for this, that our kids tend to like that pressure. So getting those really tight-fitting pajamas that and I like the all organic ones. I'm going to find some of those and show them to you guys, but they're really snug fitting, but it's that cozy feeling too. And they make them in all different kinds of weights. And if they're organic cotton and snug, then they aren't dipped in flame retardant, which is, I think, better environmentally for all of us, right? So that's part of having the bedroom be safe. But then it's what else is in the room. I love all the, Uncle Milton used to make, I don't know if they still do, a line of lights that go in your bedroom. My son was really into space and the moon, so he had the one that was called The Moon in My Room, and it has a remote, and you can click the remote and go, and you can make it a gibbous, a waxing, a waning moon, whatever you want, and he had control of it. And it had a timer so that you'd turn it on and he could be clicking the thing, whatever, making it whatever he wanted the moon, but it would go off in a half an hour. They have so many of those, like different lights that remote control and turn off, ones that make ocean sounds, ones that project on the ceiling. Whatever your kiddo is interested, I love the ones that have a timer because we don't want it to be so exciting that they stay up all night and are watching the stuff that's on the ceiling in their room, right? It should be cozy and safe, not over the top floor show, no dancing bears. You know what I'm saying? But let them be a part of it. If the room feels special to them, they will be more likely to want to go into the room. We want, when it's time to go into the bedroom, for it to be a yes, I get to go in there. By the way, our bedrooms should feel that way to us too. You sleep better when that happens. Okay, number 4, we're gonna create a bedtime ritual. So this is gonna look different depending on what the problem is that your child is having that we were talking about earlier. But our bedtime ritual, but this is something that you should take out a piece of paper and say, okay, so at the end of it, what the goal is that your child is in bed asleep by themselves. That's the goal, right? So what steps do we want to take every night to be able to get there? And it depends on your lifestyle and how old your child is and what their needs are. But I can tell you that there's a lot of things that you can build into the bedtime ritual to make sure that it's successful, right? This was one of my biggest issues. When my child was we were getting ready to start ABA, and at the time, you had to take a 16-hour class. You and your significant other had to take a 16-hour class that your child could not be present at before you were eligible to get ABA funding back in the day. And when we went to the 16-hour class, and it was, it was like 4-hour sessions, and so there were 4 of them. And I was like, there's no way I'm gonna be able to do this. I'm gonna wanna, like light my hair on fire. And to get my husband to do it too, it was like, ooh, yeah. But they wanted to know that you were willing to do that, to learn about what ABA was going to do. And you know what? I think it set us up for success. But we went in the first time and they said, what are the things that you want to do? And one of the top 3 on my list was that my child would not sleep until 3 o'clock in the morning, and that I wanted to fix that. And the guy said, we're going to have that taken care of in a week. And I laughed at him. I was like, oh, my friend. I'm a very intelligent woman. I've read everything. And if that were possible, it would already have happened. And then, he was sleeping within a week, which kind of made me mad. But part of it was that I was doing part of the bedtime ritual, but there were things that I was leaving out of it. So I'm going to tell you the bedtime ritual that he gave to us to do. And you can do, and I didn't keep all of it forever, but it got us success in the beginning. So the first thing was that when the bedtime ritual would start, we would start with a bath. And that after the bath, we would have pajama time, that we would put pajamas on, and we would do lotion. And I gave him full top to bottom lotion massage with only quiet music playing, right? Then we would sit and watch this video that I don't even know that you can get anymore, that it's called Nighty Nights. And what it is a bunch of animals, and it shows them romping around and playing all day long, baby animals with their parents. And then one by one, the animals settle down with their parents and they go to sleep. So we would watch this video, which was like 18 minutes long, right? And then we would have reading time. And in the beginning, my son would not do reading time, but we discovered that that the only way he could sit still and attend was if he was holding something in his hands, and that his favorite thing to hold in his hand was a cold apple. Had to be a cold apple. A room temperature apple just didn't work. Don't know why, but something about being able to hold, and occasionally he would attempt to take a bite out of it. He didn't really have, all that much ability to bite, so he would take like 2 little bites out of the apple. Whatever, it wasn't about that, but holding it gave him something to do so that he could focus on reading. And we had interactive reading time with him. We'd read about 5 books, and then we would say, okay, now it's time to go into your snuggy bed, right? And so then we would go into his bedroom and we would get him into his snuggy bed. At the time he had, what was the little alien robot that there was the movie? I can't remember. It wasn't E.T., but the little robot, I can't remember what his name was. Anyway, so his sheets were that, and he loved that. And he would lay there, and I would sit there and sit next to his bed, and I would sing him songs until he went to sleep. And he was out. He was out, and that was everything. Now, I had done most of that before, but I wasn't doing all of it, and there were a couple of things I was leaving out. That became the bedtime ritual, and it worked, and so we did that religiously. Eventually the video went, right? Eventually the massage went. Eventually the bath didn't happen every night, but that was well after we got used to a regular bedtime ritual. So you decide what your bedtime ritual is, but whatever it is, we're going to talk about the fact that you got to stick to it and you got to start it at a separate time, a specific time. Let's go to number 5, which is to start it at the same time each night. Because one of the things that we've talked about before on the show is sleep hygiene. And they've done a lot of research on this, and this is for us and our kids, that they have said that one of the worst things that you can do is change up the bedtime, right? So we want to set a bedtime, and when we set the bedtime, we set a time for the bedtime ritual to start. Different things for different kids and different families and different cultures, right? But if you're going to say that the bedtime is at 8:30, then you might want to start the bedtime ritual. For me, that meant starting it at 6:30. Yes, 2 hours for the bedtime ritual. But, I would rather invest 2 hours and know that my kid sleeps through the night than not invest the 2 hours and be up all night and be a mess, right? But it does become important to start that ritual. Now, sometimes things in your life will throw you off. Like you're like, well, we're going to Disneyland, and so the bedtime ritual gets thrown off, and the time that the child goes to sleep gets thrown off. That's okay occasionally, except that you need to understand it's going to throw it off for like a week or 2, and you're going to have to go back to the basics and shore it all up. If it's something that's worth that, by all means, go for it. But know that your child is not just going to revert back to what was working the next night. It's not going to happen. So we started at the same time every night. We're creating that ritual because we're teaching the brain, this is when we calm down, this is when we go to sleep, this is where we go to sleep. We did that successfully with the nap. Your child can learn how to do that because they're doing it right now with the nap. And even kids who won't nap, those kids who stay up forever, if we can get them into a pattern where we know how the brain works now, and how it works is patterns. So we want to do everything we can to create the pattern and keep the pattern as clean as possible. They talk to any sleep expert, they're going to use those phrases. Clean sleep hygiene, which means we have a ritual. We start this at the same time every night, we go to sleep, and we wake up at the same time. And that they encourage you to do that even during a vacation. I know, none of us want to hear that, right? But that if you're having trouble with sleep, that is what works. Okay, number 6. I think this one, no stimulants in the bedtime ritual, it's kind of a duh, but it's not really, because a lot of times people, for instance, people will give milk, at bedtime? Well, for some kids, they can handle that. And for some kids, there's too much sugar in milk. There is a certain amount of sugar that is in milk. So you really got to gauge what your child can handle. For our child, that he took maybe a little tiny bite out of an apple was okay. But, I've seen people that feed their kids a snack that's like pie or cookies or something like that. And then a half hour later, their child's bouncing off the walls and they don't want to go to sleep. Excuse me. Got a frog in my throat. Okay, so you really got to stop and think about, well, what are stimulants and what aren't? And for each kid, that's a different thing. And you just got to have a cutoff time. If you see that your child, first of all, none of our kids should be having caffeine. I know that feels like well, of course, like who's giving their kids a latte, but you know who you are. And I love you, but no, none of our kids should be having caffeine. And we say that, and I know the majority of you go, well, of course not, except that there's caffeine in chocolate. So if you're going to feed your child chocolate, I would not be doing it afternoon. And I know we're about to have Halloween and people are like, what? Is she crazy? If you're having trouble with sleep, you gotta take some of these things out and be reasonable about them to set them up for success. Can we agree on that? Excuse me. Okay. So no stimulants in the bedtime ritual. And it isn't just sugar. And it isn't just artificial colors and flavors. It's also certain things. Like playing video games might be a stimulant for your child. Now at 5:30 that might be fine, but at 7:30 it's not going to work if what you want to do is get them to wind down. That's the thing you want to do during the nap time and the time directly after the nap time to keep them awake, right? Not now, not during the bedtime ritual. Okay, let's move on to number 7. We're going to make a plan and we're going to stick to the plan no matter what, except when you can't, because sometimes you can't. So you've made your bedtime ritual plan and you really got to give it the college try. I know that it's not going to work the first time you do that unless you're incredibly lucky, in which case you need to buy a lottery ticket, right? If it works the first time, then that's kind of amazing, and I don't believe it, because the next night there's going to be pushback, right? You really got to give yourself at least 2 weeks of an intervention like this where you give it your all. And say, you know what, dagnabbit, we're going to do the whole thing, and you make the plan, and you're going to stick to the plan regardless of what happens. It's tough because sometimes, especially for those of you who have the kids who get up a million times, right? You just go, I can't take it, I can't do it. But you're going to make your plan about what your reaction to that is. And we've done tons of shows about this. I don't know that I've got the time to go through all of them. But for instance, if the issue that your child is having is that they need for you to sleep with them, and that's the thing you're trying to move, then the plan that we've given many people on this show is that you're going to put a cot next to their bed, and you're going to move that cot 1 inch a night, right? And that's the plan. But if you got to make room for that plan to work, and that might take 2 months, but eventually you'll be sleeping outside the door. It does happen and it will work. But if you give up after a week, then it's not going to work, right? For those of you that your child gets up so many times during the middle of the night, there are several different plans that you can do. One of my favorite ones that we've talked about before on the show is called the Bedtime Pass. And I'll see if we still have the file, the graphic, but I'm sure they have. If you go on Pinterest and put Bedtime Pass, there'll be people who have the templates. And basically what it is that you talk to your child, and sometimes that means help with the team, and you show your child, because our children don't understand everything that we're saying all the time, but you show them, this is your bedtime pass. And you make a decision with your team about how many passes they get. For instance, if your child gets up 5 times a night, and you've noticed that it's about 5 times before they wear themselves out, then I would either start with 5 or 4 and give them 4 passes and say, you can get up, but when you get up, you have to bring me this pass. And when you're out of passes, that's it. You don't get to get up again. It sounds redonkulous, and it sounds like it for sure wouldn't work, but here's the thing. If your child actually understands how it works, they will start to hoard the passes because they have fear. I want to be able to get up when I need to get up because I have fear. And so they will hold passes so that they can have them in case of an emergency, which is a really reasonable plan, right? But notice I said if your child understands the plan, because in the beginning your child is not going to understand the plan, and they're going to say, they're going to come and they're going to give you a pass, and they're going to use all of their passes, and then they're going to try to get up without a pass. And if they get up without a pass, you have to not interact with them and motor them back to bed. That means, that if your child is small enough, you pick them up, but motoring usually means that, you very gently take your child and you lead them back to bed, you put them in bed, you don't kiss them on the forehead, you don't say goodnight when you're out of a pass, you don't say, now don't get up again, you walk out. And if you have to do that 300 times one night and you do not interact with them, you don't even make eye contact with them, and they're gonna kick, they're gonna scream, they're gonna lose their minds, and you're gonna not get a lot of sleep. You're only gonna have to do that usually once. So, but that's the plan, and that's why I'm saying you got to stick to it no matter what, because it's going to feel like the plan isn't working. This is your child going, but it always worked before. At some point I get up and you entertain me and my life is happy. So I'm going to keep trying, and you have to hold tight. You got to be the wall and be like, that's not happening anymore. I'm not interacting with you. You're not ignoring your child. You're ignoring the behavior, right? I encourage you when you're making your bedtime plan to do that with the experts that you have working on your team so that you have a good, solid plan. But then you have to have the fortitude to stick with the plan. And that is often the hardest part. So let's go to number 8. You really want to do number 8, which is get support for the first week of sleep intervention. Now, what does that look like? Sometimes that looks like you take off the week so that you can sleep during the day. Sometimes that looks like you and your spouse make an agreement, and it might work better for you that you take Tuesday night and you just have a plan that you're going to be up all Tuesday night, and they've got the plan that they're going to be up all Wednesday night. For my husband and I, it was that we would tag team. And so I might, it's like taking a watch, I'm going to take the first watch. I've got the first hour. And that I know, from 8 to 9, I'm the person responsible for motoring him back to bed. And then if it becomes 9 o'clock, it's his turn. But we always had the option that it was like, I need you to tag in, which means I'm not going to make it to my 9 o'clock hour. I need you to tag in. Sometimes people invite a friend or a relative to come over for the week and stay and visit. And sometimes the best way I've seen people make that happen is they say, I want you to not intervene while we're doing the sleep intervention, but I want you to be there during the day to help keep them awake during the day because I'm going to sleep during the day, right? Whatever works for you, but you likely are going to need more support for that first week of intervention. It's going to be worth it. I promise you it'll be worth it if you're willing to do all of the steps, but it's unreasonable to think that you are suddenly going to be patient, that you are suddenly going to have, because what happens is that we get tired ourselves and then we give in. And that's why we are where we are. You need to be able to hold that wall of, nope, this is what we said we're going to do, and so that's what we're going to do. And I'm not going to just say, okay, come sleep in my bed so that we can all get rest. Look, you've been doing that because that's the way you needed to do something to survive. But now we're talking about getting to that promised land of your child sleeping and you having your life back, which means we're going to go through this bumpy period. I'm just saying don't try to do it without giving yourself something in return, whether it's that you get to sleep during the day or you have somebody there to help you, whatever works for you, but you got to get some support for that first week of sleep intervention. Otherwise, you might find that it's not going to work for you because you will give in. We all do. We're only human. Okay, number 9. You got to be willing to go slowly. We were talking about the cot thing, and for some people they go, that's going to take months. Yes, but the truth of the matter is your child is going to get older anyway, and when I'm talking to somebody who has a 5-year-old who the child won't sleep unless they're right there next to them, and I think about, okay, so if that took us 9 months for them to be able to sleep on their own at 5, then the rest of their lives, they're going to sleep by themselves. Or we could wait and do it when they're 14. So you're going to go through all those years you're going to go through 9 more years of what you currently have going on before you finally, I would rather invest the 9 months, right? And I think, aren't we about to do daylight savings again? I always get confused about this, whether we voted it out or not. But it's always a great example for me of the fact that we all can do all kinds of change when it's slow. I certainly have noticed lately that the sun is coming up at a different time and going down at a different time. But I've noticed it because something significant is happening, that the sun comes in the window into our bedroom at a different time and it's waking me up in a different way, right? Otherwise, I didn't notice it. And suddenly you go, wait a second, it used to get dark at 8 o'clock and now it's getting dark at 5 o'clock, right? That's because the time that the sunset changes by like a minute and a half every day. And it's so small that we don't notice until it interrupts our pattern in some way. We go, look at that. But we don't have a total meltdown because it's happened really slowly. But what happens when we change it by a whole hour in one day? They've documented it. There's more accidents, that people, their sleep gets thrown off. They don't people aren't as productive at work the week that it happens, and it takes us a week to accommodate that change in time. That's those of us who are adults, who do not have a language deficit, who are able to reason things out, and we have great life experience and we've been through this. And still, we can't manage it because it's been an hour instead of a minute and a half. So this is my case for going slowly. If you go slowly enough, part of the reason why your child wants you to be there is because you're a comforting presence and they have some concerns. It's the middle of the night. I always find it weird, and I'm a person who allowed our son to co-sleep way longer than I should have, because I've always said, why is it that, those of us who are adults, if we're lucky enough to have a significant other, we get to go to bed and there's somebody right there next to you that's comforting. Them breathing in their sleep is comforting. We are a society that likes to be comforted, and yet we take our most vulnerable children and we expect for them to be okay sleeping alone. It's a lot to ask. So, but on the other hand, what are you going to, they're not going to go to college because they want to sleep in your bed and they never feel the comfort of being able to go to sleep on their own. We don't want that for them either, right? But we don't need to cold turkey them. And it doesn't work cold turkey because we will give in. But that moving, that inch, it does work. It might take 9 months. It's not the only sleep intervention that going slowly works with too, right? If you find that totally ditching the nap isn't working, you might try to shorten the nap and make it shorter and shorter until the nap is completely gone. If your child is somebody who is awake up until 11 o'clock every night, then trying to get them to go to sleep at 7 o'clock might be hard. I think it's doable if there's no nap and you're really exercising them. But 7 o'clock might still be a stretch. Maybe you need to go to 10:30 and not 11 o'clock. And see, maybe they go to sleep at 10 o'clock because you wore them out during the day. But we don't have to do these big, harsh moves if we don't need to. Be willing to go slowly, be willing to make that change like the sun every day. And you will see a big difference. In 6 months, you'll be like, oh my gosh, they go to sleep at a regular time and my life is better than it was, and you'll be happy that you went slow. Let's go to number 10. We're gonna keep things dull. This is one of the big things. It's funny, when I was pregnant, somebody said to me, it's so fascinating that the baby that's in your belly is the baby that comes out. And I remember going, what does that mean? Of course it is. They don't switch them. What are you talking about? They were like, no, whatever routine you have your baby on in your body is the routine when they come out. I thought that was ridiculous. I didn't really listen to it. And I was somebody who had gestational diabetes, so every night I had to give myself an insulin shot, and it would freak me out every night. So I would sit up and be anxious about it and not be able to give myself the shot until like 3 o'clock in the morning. So I would be up and watching old TV shows, like I would sit up and watch What's My Line and all these old shows, and my husband would give up and he would go, honey, I gotta go to bed, and I'd be like, whatever, I'm gonna sit up. And I was doing this craft project that hung in my son's room, and all these different things, right? But I couldn't get myself to give the shot until 3 o'clock in the morning. And then suddenly I have a baby that comes out that never wants to sleep until 3 o'clock in the morning. Then I started to understand what they were talking about, so I will say, future reference, when you're pregnant, try to keep yourself on a schedule so that the baby comes out and it's on a schedule. Sometimes babies have minds of their own, right? But I went to the pediatrician fairly early on and I said, my child doesn't want to sleep until 3 o'clock in the morning. And he said, well, what are you doing at 2 o'clock in the morning? And I was like, oh, I'm up and I'm watching old TV shows and rocking him and talking to him and nursing him. And he was like, why would he want to sleep during that time? Like, that sounds like a good time for a baby. You got to keep things really, really dull. And he said, go into a very quiet room, don't have the TV on, rock the baby in the rocking chair, but don't be nursing him. Keep things as dull as possible. And again, that took me years to really fully understand. But if your child is getting up in the middle of the night, from the time that the bedtime ritual starts until when you want them to be awake in the morning, dull is the order of the day. So during the bedtime ritual, it's dull. If your child gets up in the middle of the night, there can be no party, right? If your child gets up in the middle of the night and you need to be up with them, there is no conversation, there is no singing, there's no food, there's no water, unless they, if your child needs a sip of water, great, but otherwise that becomes a stimulant. So we keep things as dull as possible. We think, oh, well, I'll just rock them and sing to them. That is not dull enough. You just need, and it's terrible because you will be tired enough that you will go back to sleep. That's okay, as long as you make sure that your doors are sealed and your child can't get out. Keep things dull. Dull, 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 dull. That is the order of the day. And then finally, number 11, in the morning, when your child has had good sleep hygiene, if they have not, if the night has been miserable, we do not talk about it at all. There's no reference to it. We don't do that. But in the morning, if they have gone to bed, if they slept in their own bed, whatever the criteria is, whatever it was that you were working on, for instance, if you're doing the bedtime pass and they still have a leftover bedtime pass, we celebrate that and we reward that. In the morning is when the party happens. And it could be something huge like, they get a little toy, or it can be as simple as, hugs and kisses and praise, and you get to pick what you're having for breakfast, right? But something always to reward that good sleep hygiene. Sometimes we get so into our lives that we forget how important it is to stop and celebrate the successes. But if your child was able to go to sleep with, whatever you were working on, you need to have a moment where you reward them for that, because that will ensure that it keeps on happening, that they realize, oh, I feel pretty good today. I got a good night's sleep and I did what mom asked me and I got this thing. We loved the little McDonald's toys because we discovered that you could get them you could just go and for like $1.75-ish, you could get the McDonald's toy. And so we just would go and have them on a regular basis. I have a bin of them that I got rid of at a garage sale. But they were great little reinforcers that we did that felt like a very big deal to him. Okay. So we've gone through all of those tips. I hope that you have some new idea of how you can affect change around the bedtime. I've seen this work with so many different people and get to the point where they can put themselves to sleep and you're able to go to sleep yourself, which is a big part of the puzzle, right? Because there are other things that you have to be fresh for in the day, and you are not going to be able to show up for your child in the way that you want to if you have not had rest. So let's prioritize having a successful bedtime. Now, one last word on we don't get into tussles, we don't get into fights, we don't get into arguments. On a very basic level, it's not good for anybody, but think of all the rules that it violates of the things that we were just talking about. Arguing, anger, yelling are all forms of stimuli, right? We don't want that. It's not in the category of dull. So if you find yourself getting so upset with your child because they won't just go to sleep, if you have to put headphones on, whatever you have to do to keep it calm for you, that we don't engage. It's like, for them on their side, if they get us to engage with them and create drama or theater or whatever, then they win. Now you're awake and they're awake. What we want to win is for them to get a good night's sleep. So no battles anywhere, no punishment. No, we just quietly motor them back to the bed, put the sheet over, and we're out. That's all we got to do. All right. We are going to be back tomorrow with Ask Dr. Doreen. Dr. Doreen Grampiche will be here. Of course, I don't remember what our topic is because I'm that way. I have no idea, Chris. I need to give myself a Post-it note, but we got a great topic. I just don't remember what it is. I feel like it's talking about interverbals, and I think that's what it is, about building language, and you guys specifically had asked for interverbals and tacts, what those are. For those of you who are like, I don't know what that term means, it's the next steps towards building conversation, that so many of you will write in and say, well, my child can label things, that my child can say water, which is great, and I longed for the day that they could say water, but now I want them to tell me about their day at school. I want to get to real conversation. So tacts and interverbals are the next steps along the way to do that. And we did a building language show a couple of weeks ago, and you guys said, can you really talk about how you teach this? So we've got a bunch of questions about that, but we'll take questions on anything. That's tomorrow. We're really excited about that. Make sure that you tune in, and I will see you guys then. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.